Morning, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the Executive Cabinet Member Leaders Portfolio, held in the presence of members of other political groups. Item 1 is the monitoring of Executive Cabinet Member decisions. Is there anything anybody would like to raise on that item? If not, we will move on to the couple of financial reports. So item 2 is the aggregate financial monitor quarter 2.
I'll take that, please.
Sorry, Graham, I didn't see you there.
No, it's okay.
Over to
Lisa
you.
Butcher was going to present. Unfortunately, something's come up and she can't attend the meeting. So the aggregate financial monitor sets out the financial performance of the council at quarter 2. At quarter 2, the council is showing an overall overspend of £14.7 million forecast for the year. Of that, we're expecting around £13 million will be as a result of the demand pressures in children's services. So what we're seeing is a continuation of the very expensive children's services placements costs. So we have children and of very complex needs, needing very specialist residential support, that frankly there's a lack of supply, and the supply that is in place is very, very expensive. So that's driving a significant cost in Children's Services Department. There is a programme of demand management underway in Children's Services. We're also undertaking benchmarking of costs against other local authorities to understand if there's areas where we can perhaps drive down some of the individual costs we're paying for placements. But that is it's a quite substantial piece of work, and it will take time to go through. In terms of the reserves for the year, we're expecting to spend around about £58 million worth of reserves across the council to support the activities in year. We have a £98 million capital programme that we're expecting to that is underway. At quarter 2, we have only actually spent £24 million against that budget, so there is quite a bit of work to be done there in terms of delivering the capital scheme. And as usually happens with some capital programmes, there will be elements outside of our control, and some of it will slip to future years. So I am happy to take any questions. I think the key point to make is obviously this is a consolidated report that brings together information that's previously been presented to individual cabinet members in individual service areas.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Leader. Graham, can you put this into some context for us? Obviously, that is a significant overspend in children's services. We're used to small overspends or small underspends, but that's significant. You said that this year we'll be using £58 million worth of reserves in order to cover day-to-day expenditure. How much does that figure of 58 million compared to the original amount budgeted? And have you any indication at the moment, it's probably an unfair question, but have you any indication at the moment where you think that figure for reserve spending will fall by the end of the year?
Graham?
Sorry, I realised I just put myself on mute there. So what I'd say is, yes, obviously there's a very significant demand pressure in children's services. We have, in the budget, we specified that we would use £9 million of corporate reserves to smooth the introduction of savings in the year. The 58 million obviously would include that, but there would have been plans within departments to actually spend some of the reserves in year anyway. So what I would say is the 58 million pound worth of reserves is a substantial use of reserves, but some of that would already have been planned in from departments as they use money for specific schemes. So I'd need to go back to the departments to really understand what that 58 million pound represents. But certainly within that 58 million pounds, you'd be looking for money to support the children's services overspend. So immediately that position does does raise the overall use of reserves in year. At this point in time, I am hopeful that the forecast overspend in children's services will come down some, and consequently we'll see a reduction in the level of reserves that will be used across the council. But to be clear, I don't yet have certainty as to what the the outturn in terms of use of reserves will be.
Yeah, I think you spoke about it being it's going to take a while in order for that piece of work to bring down the costs in children's services. I think it's important for us to know as councillors soon as possible, really, as to how these significant spends in children's services are going to affect the likely outcome, because I won't say I've never heard of such high over expenditure, but it must be one of the highest I've heard. And obviously, we were presented with the sort of budget forecasts on Monday, and that included sort of significant year-in use of reserves. And obviously, if they're going at the rate that they are, that might not be there. But thanks for that, Graham.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. I mean, yeah, it's one of two huge demand pressures, isn't it? Children's services, looked after children in particular. The other being adult social care, and we are having to shift to early intervention and demand management. But as we all know, that does take time. Those types of internal reforms do take time to work their way through the system before you start realising savings. And big elephant in the room really is that we do need government reform of looked after children's accommodation services, because it is, as Graham said, it's extremely expensive, the private sector, which we're forced to use. So there's a lot of work needs doing on that in order to bring those costs right down.
I do think we're in a better place than most, leader, on this. I do think we are in a better place than most. But if you look across the piece, I think there's a lot of local authorities who are on the verge of going bust over this.
Yeah,
and
absolutely,
it's a huge issue now.
I mean, there'll be more to say on this, the finance in general, the next cabinet in February and full council in February. But our prudent management of finances over the years is what's keeping us in the position of one of the better councils who aren't facing a cliff edge at the moment. You're absolutely right. There's many councils, and the list is growing, that are really facing catastrophe with their finances. Well, thank you very much for that report. I'm approving that report, Vicky. Yeah.
It's just for noting. It's just for noting.
Yeah. Need to remember to say that. So item 3 is the Treasury Management outturn report for Q2. Graham.
Thanks, Leader. So the Treasury Outturn report obviously sets out the council's performance in terms of managing its investments and its borrowings in the year, and we have a series of measures that are agreed by council each February. I'm happy to report at Q2 that we remain within the parameters set by council, so our performance is as expected. We have around £197.5 million worth of council investments at this point in time, so we're earning a return on them to help boost our reserves. So certainly, going back to the previous report, although we will be drawing down on reserves in the year, we will also see some money come back into reserves through this kind of treasury activity. We obviously also manage our borrowing. We do have some short-term borrowing that was required at the end of the last financial year that will be repaid in the next few months, so we'll see the costs from that fall away for future years. In terms of the other parameters, we remain significantly under borrowed against our maximum limit of affordable borrowing, so we do have scope at a later date to to take out external borrowing to support our capital programme. I would seek not to engage in external borrowing at this point in time, given where interest rates are. As much as possible, we would want to delay any additional external borrowing for another couple of years or so until we see interest rates come down. But obviously, that's something that would be a decision would be taken at the time as necessary. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Graham. Bit of better news there on the, and again, it's another example of how we manage our finances to bring in that additional income. Okay, I will note that report. Item 4 is the pensioner support scheme. Phil Rimmer, presumably.
Yes, thanks, Leader. So this relates to the motion that was passed at the October Council to release £200,000 from the area working budgets to provide a winter support package for pensioners following the removal of the winter fuel payment for those that weren't in receipt of pension credit. So just to give a brief background to activity over the last number of weeks, we've been crunching data to try and determine which pensioners based on our caseload are getting housing benefit and council tax support but not in receipt of pension credit. So we determined that there was approximately around 3,300 pensioners that fell into that position. We've launched a take-up campaign over the last few weeks, encouraging them to actually check whether they qualify for pension credit. But what we discovered is that the Department for Work and Pensions, as part of their take-up campaign, are targeting around 450 pensioners in Bolton that they think should qualify for pension credit. And that's a much lower number than the number we originally had from the DWP. It ran into thousands originally. So this report proposes that we use the £200,000 to provide some financial support directly to those 3,300 pensioners. Some of them may well qualify for pension credit within that 450, but the DWP can't actually share the data with us, so we don't know who those pensioners are. But we do know that the vast majority of those 3,300 are pensioners that are on low income because they're getting housing benefit and council tax support. Some of them we know from the phone calls we've had through the take-up campaign are literally just £3-4 above the limit for pension credit. So in the report, we set out a couple of options. One was to provide £150 post office voucher, the other was £200. I think our recommendation based on the HSF budget is that we can certainly afford to provide a £200 voucher to all of those pensioners. So really the report's looking for that approval.
Thanks, Phil. Any questions or comments before I say a few words? Martin, Councillor Cox. I think you're on mute, Martin, if you are speaking.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, just a couple of points, Phil. The first one is I've heard the figure bandied around that the total loss to pensioners across Bolton as a result of the cancellation of the winter fuel benefit is about £10 million. I don't know whether you've got any accurate figures on that. I've got a couple of other questions, but do you want to take that one first?
I think part of the problem, the figures that we were originally given by the DWP, and this is the same across Greater Manchester because it's been a discussion of one of our benchmarking groups, seem to be quite inflated. So I think originally we were told that there was around 4,000 pensioners in Bolton that would qualify for pension credit, but the DWP are only targeting 450. And I would expect that they're using quite a detailed data set to determine who those pensioners are. And that's played out across other Greater Manchester councils as well, who've been given very high figures, but then when they've actually done some data crunching, the figure's much lower. So I think based on the DWP's take-up campaign, they only consider that there's 450 pensions in Bolton that are losing out on pension credit, and they're the ones they're targeting. So I think the figure is much lower than that.
When you say, I mean the amount that pensioners would have received across the piece is that not around £10 million?
I think Phil, Martin's talking about the total number of previous recipients of winter fuel allowance, so all pensioners.
Yeah, so let me just do the maths in my head on this one. So what you're referring to is the £200 and £300 winter fuel payment that they would have normally received. Yeah, I'd have to get those figures for you, Martin. I'd have to get up-to-date accurate figures on that, to be honest with you, based on some of the data we've got. But I can certainly provide that information. I wouldn't like to guess at that at the moment.
Right. Okay. I think it's around 10 million, but I would appreciate, somebody looking at that and providing that figure. The other point, of course, is that the withdrawal of the winter fuel allowance is recurring. It's not just this year. It's been withdrawn for good. It's not just been withdrawn year on year. So second of sort of three questions I've got. Are there any plans to make this a reoccurring amount that we pay out, or is this just a one-off to get us through this year?
I think that's my question, Martin. A lot of this will depend on what happens with HSF, or indeed what that might be replaced with, the level of our local welfare funds, what the priorities of the council are with the other things we do, like free school meal vouchers, etc. It is an unknown financial situation at the moment, so I can't really answer that question in terms of what I would like to do, but what would be realistically possible to do, because the £200,000 we took from unspent foreign monies was a minority of that. I think it, correct me Phil, was it 400 and something or 600 and something we added it to.
Yes.
So it was only a third of this entire budget.
Yeah.
So clearly, had we not got the ring-fenced HSF element, we couldn't have been doing this £200. It would have been more in the region of perhaps £70 or £80.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, it's wait and see. Let's see where we are. Next summer, let's see what the government does with HSF. Let's see indeed what the government does potentially with auto enrolment of pension credit, which I think all the indications are they're seriously looking into doing that as well.
They are, yes. Yeah.
Did you have a third?
Well, I think just the final point is, and it was one I would have made at council if we'd got to a debate on it, and that is it's extremely difficult for us to replace, in effect, the DWP in terms of the stepping in and providing benefits that the DWP have withdrawn. Look, I mean, I think it's not ignoble what you're doing. You're trying to help out in a difficult situation. I don't criticise that, but I think given the report Graham has just given to us about the sizable use of resources to cover what people see as our own obligations, I think it's extremely difficult for us to step in where the DWP have left and try and cover these enormous costs. We didn't get to the figure, but if it is around the £10 million mark, it's just something we, as an organisation, and I said I'm not criticising the attempts to ameliorate this issue this year. I think it's a noble attempt, but I just think it's not something that we can do if the DWP decides to withdraw a benefit for whatever reason. It's really difficult within these financial constraints for us to step in and take on that burden. I won't reopen the whole debate about spending on environment and spending on social services, but we have significant issues around our infrastructure, and I think we've reached a point where we can't take much more of it. So I mean, that's more of a point I would have made at council, but I do think it's a noble attempt, but I don't think it's sustainable. Thank you, Leader.
Thanks, Martin. Councillor McGowan.
Thank you, Leader. Just one question, and my apologies, Nick. I think you did actually You were asked this question at council. There's a lot of work involved in the administration of this, and I'm just wondering where those costs are coming from. But again, I apologise because I think you were asked that question at council, but I can't remember. So it's just for my own sake. Thank you.
If Phil wants to come in, he can, but the HSF fund including an element within that for administration. So staffing costs and all of the time and energy that goes into the distribution of things like the distribution of free school meal vouchers and the running of the home care repair service and all those other things we do with the HSF is covered by that HSF money. So the staffing time to do this piece of work was absorbed within that original budget.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I will say, you know, it's no secret because I'm on record publicly twice saying that, you know, removal of winter fuel allowance in such a way was not something that I would have done. That's not to say that the means testing of winter fuel allowance wasn't something that should have been seriously looked at, and the three political parties, Labour, Conservative and Lib Dem, were all committed to doing that. I think what we're demonstrating is, I mean, first of all, there's 450 pensioners in Bolton who have unfairly had winter fuel allowance removed from them because, for whatever reason, they weren't collecting the pension credit. So that's in effect a double whammy. They've been losing out on potentially quite a lot of money for a long time. It can go into the thousands, you know, pension credit, depending what level of, if you're just on the basic state pension. So the 200 or 300 pound pales into insignificance for some of them. So in many respects, that's the more important job, that 450. I suppose what we've done is identified a next rung up, and we can all discuss and debate where you draw the line in terms of poverty. But clearly one of the definitions that we're choosing to use as a council is those who are above the threshold for credit, but still within the threshold for other forms of financial, state or council support, which is what we've done, and identified 3,300. Is it sustainable in the long term, as Martin says? Well, I think we've all had discussions about HSF, about the unsustainability of HSF in the long term. Clearly, people's incomes and living standards need to be improved by a better performing economy, but that still doesn't address the issue of those who are on fixed incomes, as most pensioners will be. Should the council step up and be an alternative social security provider? In many respects, since COVID, that duty has been forced upon us anyway by the previous government. The current government have carried on with that. I think it's all about balance and us doing what we can feasibly do as a council to assist some of our most vulnerable people in our society. It's obviously going to be revisited at the future. There's no doubt about that. We're going to be continuing this discussion. I'd like let you have the final say, Martin.
No, it's not. It's not the final say. It's a technical thing, really, Nick. When would have pensioners received the winter fuel allowance, Phil? What date would they receive it, and when are they likely to receive this voucher?
So they're receiving it as we speak, I think, from the government. So I think that started going into bank accounts from last week. We're ready to go with the company that provides our vouchers. So if we get approval today, we're very hopeful we'll get those vouchers out this side of Christmas. So we're hoping they'll land before Christmas.
But when would they have got the winter fuel allowance?
They're receiving
not going to get it this year, are they? So when would they have got it?
You mean the ones that currently qualify for it?
No, ordinarily, when would people who got the winter fuel allowance have received it?
Round about now.
Right.
So it's going into bank accounts over the last week or so. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, thanks members for your contribution to this important subject. So I am happy to approve that report.
Chair, can I just confirm with that you approve
Sorry,
the £200
option two.
vouchers?
Option 2, £200 for the 3,300. Thanks very much. Go back to the agenda. Item 5, financial remedy for upheld complaints.
Thank you,
Is
Leader.
it Bruce Lister? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. This report relates to a complaint about an assessment by the Independent Living Service. The details of what led to the complaint are contained in section 2 of the report. Section 2.15 explains the rationale for the financial remedy, which is in line with the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman guidelines. And I realise that we don't actually have a total in the report. It's actually a total of £3,200, which is made up of the individual items which are contained in section 2. I'm happy to take any questions.
Sorry, I was muted then. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, if not, so I'm happy to note that.
You're actually making a decision, Leader.
I'm making the decision. I do apologise. I'm struggling with my agenda at the moment. For people who are watching, I either make a decision or I note something. So yes, approving that.
If I can help, Leader, it's the exec members recommended to approve the financial remedy, which is based on the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman's remedy guidance as set out in this report.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to approve that. For the benefit of anybody who is watching this recording on catch up, the next 2 items are deemed confidential. They're exempt at this moment in time from public disclosure, but will be public in the future due to sensitive or financially sensitive nature to the report. So we will stop the recording at this point.